Hi, I'm Spike and I like to talk about nerd stuff. It's been way too long since my last video, but I'm back to working on that Transformers Armada retrospective. It turned out to be a bit of a monster to work on, so while I'm finishing that up, there's a bunch of smaller projects that I would love to get through first. On that topic, recently a new Transformers micro series has launched, the first of 2 animated shows this year. It's called Transformers Wild King. And like the name suggests, it's genuinely pretty wild. But before we get into that, a little background. Now, I make it no secret that I love the anime era of Transformers between 2001 and 2007. From Robots in Disguise, Armada, Not You, and Cybertron. There was such an infectious vibe to these shows. Cybertron especially went really hard into the super mecha aesthetic, and its fights were at their best when they went full Dragon Ball Z explosive ridiculousness. Like when Starscream grew to the size of a planet and fought the Cybertronian god, who was also a planet, who used moons as weapons to beat the living hell out of Starscream. Like, that was so awesome. But ever since Animated broke that streak in 2007 and the Bayformers movies and Transformers Prime revamped the franchise, we haven't gotten another show like that. Even when Japan repeated history and ditched Prime's 3rd season in favor of doing their own wacky line with its own animated cartoon, it was just kind of dull and disappointing. While the Wild King hasn't gotten nearly as crazy as the heights of TF Cybertron just yet, I mean, give it time, it's only a few episodes in, that's exactly the kind of tone that they're going for with that show. Now, in terms of plot, there's really not much to tell. There's absolutely no question here that this is as much a toy commercial as you can get. Like, I know, this is Transformers, the entire franchise exists for no other reason than to sell toys. There is an extensive entry called To Sell Toys on TF Wiki dedicated to the topic of just how shameless this franchise is and always has been on that front. But usually, the actual fiction does at least the bare minimum to try and hide that fact. There's plot, characterization, story ideas, lore, even philosophy at times. The Transformers franchise is replete with examples of fantastic stories and characters, whether it's Starscream's sacrifice in Armada or IDW with a ton of amazing and heart-rending plot twists and story turns, or Energon with... well, okay, maybe not every one of these has good moments like that, but you get my point. But by contrast, Wild King is as basic and plotless as you can get without just literally picking up the toys and smashing them into each other. In a funny way, it makes me think of an infusion between Beast Wars Neo, Generation 1 and Cybertron. It has the humor and goofiness of Neo, the design influence primarily from Generation 1, and the super mecha CGI fights of Cybertron all wrapped into one show, even if it's kind of missing many of the core story appeal of those shows. The fights are great though. They're fast and fluid and full of manic energy. We even get that old school silly anime blast effect that I've missed so much. In other words, Transformers Wild King has finally brought back what I've missed for so long. That old Transformers mecha anime charm which we haven't had since the mid-2000s. Unfortunately, that comes with a few caveats, and you've almost certainly noticed at least some of this just by looking at the footage. First, you can probably tell just how cheap the animation is. It really does look like they just took the CAD files, lightly textured them, and started animating. Barely. Frequently in the non-action sequences, which admittedly isn't much of the show, characters will just be uncannily frozen in place, and most bizarre of all, none of the characters' mouths move. Even though you can prominently see mouths on several characters, they don't open them once. They did this with Transformers Go too, and I have absolutely no idea why. For as cheap as something like Cyberverse was, for example, for as often as it reused assets and rushed its plots to fit a very short runtime, I can't even imagine them going so cheap as to not have mouths moving. Even the Machinima series, as infamous as the bad, weird lip flaps on that show were, actually had the lips moving when the characters spoke. How expensive can it even be to do that? Okay, real talk, in my actual day job, I work in animation under extreme time crunch and with very limited budget, doubtless far less money than this show even got, and I still always ensure that the lips move when I'm animating. It's especially odd here because Japanese animation almost always has the lips flap open without any specific vowel shapes. So the idea that they couldn't do here what even Energon managed to do 20 years ago is frankly baffling. This is either extreme penny pinching on something which makes zero sense, or actually this might just be a style choice. On the subject of their faces, unfortunately, their cheapness also extends to their lack of expressions. Their eyes don't even widen, they don't scowl or smile, their faces are entirely static. It's a bit disappointing that they would go even that far with how little went into the animation. Especially since, quite often, the body movements are actually quite buttery smooth and genuinely excellent in spots. So overall, the animation is this strange, almost surreal blend of unbelievable cheapness, but also genuinely impressive moments of fluidity and fun. I will say though, after a few minutes, the static faces didn't even bother me. It just becomes part of this show's odd quirks and aesthetic. Now, I've already made several references to the overall plotlessness of this micro-series so far, but just for due diligence, what is the plot of the show? Well, such as it is. Well, Optimus Prime is sitting in his office on Cybertron before his best buddy of all time, Megatron, calls him up to tell him about this super cool planet that he's found that Optimus should totally check out. Optimus does in fact go to the planet and has a run-in with one of the locals, Lightlong, who's totally not Longrak from Beast Wars Neo, don't even ask. And the two get attacked by Megatron, who has decided to be evil now, I guess. He clearly wasn't before, and Optimus is taken aback by this. He's also taken aback by the fact that Megatron has combined with a local called Captain Volker, giving him this cool dinosaur arm. Optimus tries to fight back, but is thoroughly overwhelmed. And that's when Lightlong combines with Optimus, and together the two beat up Megatron. During all of this, Optimus is told of a prophecy in which one day there will come a legendary figure who will unite all the elements of earth, water, fire, and lightning into one, presumably by combining with several animal transformers on this planet. How did Lightlong know that he could combine with Optimus specifically? Why was he designed with this in mind? Who knows? Episode 3 is literally just another dinosaur robot shows up, combines to become Megatron's other arm, and together they Super Ultra Mega Blast Optimus away, winning the fight. That's it, that's literally all that happens in the entire episode. Then again, the episode is only a few minutes long. You may have noticed that one thing I left out of all of that is any hint of characterization, and that's because there isn't any. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. Lightlong has this fun, goofy, nervous energy to him, but that's it. Optimus is generic good guy robot. Megatron at random decides to be generic bad guy robot. And Volker has zero personality to speak of except showing fealty to Megatron. This is really not a show made for thinking or getting attached to the cast, is what I'm saying. Bear in mind as well, episode 3, which is also kinda technically episode 2 thanks to the way they posted these, is 7 minutes long. 4 of those minutes are dedicated to the actual animated cartoon part, and the remaining 3 minutes is entirely just showing off how cool the toys are. And don't get me wrong, I actually do think that these toys look pretty cool. I might even get them if I can, so clearly the marketing attempt is working. I just wanted to make it clear what their priorities are. So, yeah, the plot is pretty thin. It's an excuse to show off cool toy gimmicks and have some fun action sequences. We don't know yet why Megatron suddenly decided to stop being friends with Optimus, if this is a post-Great War Cybertron, or even a world where the war never started in the first place. We don't know anything about this version of the Transformers lore, and in terms of Autobots and Decepticons, thus far all we've gotten is Optimus and Megatron, and it seems like that's not going to change. At least we won't until the toy line decides to introduce some in the next wave of action figures. But if we're being honest, is any of this even a problem? This show is as straightforward with its audience as possible. They know it's to sell toys. We know that it's to sell toys, so why even try to hide it? Sure, make the character models so accurate to the toys that we can see the giant gaps in the limbs where they didn't have the budget for extra plastic to cover up. At least it's more honest that way. And why not go forwards with basically zero plot except the fact that a bad man has a dinosaur arm now? Who even has time for a plot when the episodes are 5 minutes long or less? It's weird, but while normally I'm extremely annoyed at the Transformers shows which tank themselves by ditching plot in favor of explicit toy marketing, and I look at these things with cynical eyes and feel true irritation at the direction of my beloved franchise has gone, but somehow the more blatant that this show gets with what it's doing, the more charmed I become at its unabashed, cynical, capitalistic ploy. They're not hiding anything, and it's a fun few minutes, so what's even the harm? Transformers Wild King is silly fun. I don't think we'll get anything more than extreme surface level goofiness from this show. But who knows, maybe it'll be like Cyberverse and surprise everybody by suddenly taking a hard swerve into shockingly dark territory. But I doubt it. For now, I'm just really enjoying the ride, and I hope you folks are too. Thanks for watching. Well, with that over, I would genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this show. I think it's been a lot of fun so far, even though it's only been like 3 episodes at the time of recording. And I wonder, are you guys actually enjoying this show as well so far and have, decent hopes for it? Because it seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's very simple, it's very basic, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch through all of this. Please do subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I am working on a bunch of projects right now that I actually hope to get out pretty soon. I made a video on a relatively obscure character from the IDW2 Transformers comic called Rubble that I've kind of wanted to talk about for longer than I've even realized I wanted to be doing YouTube stuff. And I don't know, I think it's kind of interesting. Along with that, I'm also doing some Unicron trilogy videos on Armada, Energon, and Cybertron. The Energon one is so very difficult to write because it's hard to say something that hasn't already been said about that show. And once all of those things are done, I'm actually planning on making stuff on the BotCon fiction, because genuinely there is so much actually fantastic stuff that the BotCon fiction made that barely anybody in even the fandom actually gave credit for how good it was, and honestly how influential it ended up being. So if any of that sounds interesting, then please do subscribe and stick around.